Welcome, everyone, to episode 434 of Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed. I am privileged this episode to be joined by Eric Steinberg, who played Netan in Stargate SG-1. We have him live this episode, so if you are joining us live and you're in the YouTube chat, go ahead and submit your questions over to Anthony and to Lockwatcher, who are available there to take them and get them over to me. Eric, welcome, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's a treat to have you.
Thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you.
You said you were in D.C. What brings you to D.C., if I may ask?
I am. Well, actually, no, please. I'm actually a D.C. native. I was born in D.C. General, and my mother is still here. And I'm back looking after her right now. She's a little bit fragile at the moment, so I'm just making sure she's protected and okay.
I am in a similar situation with my mother, so we're approaching that. And
are you really?
Yeah. So all this is to say that I understand exactly where you're coming from, and when the time is right, you don't want to be anywhere else, So. Not to say that no, she's on her way out or anything, but I mean we are all on our way out, And at a certain point, it's like we're you get if you were tight with your folks, you find ways to make it work, and you're there for them if your heart's in the right place. If they didn't drive you nuts.
Well, just because of how you're talking about it, I know you understand. I also know that you are one of the fortunate ones like me, because not everybody is so fortunate to have parents who, you have to be just so grateful for. So, yeah, we're lucky, and we're loyal because we're lucky. We've been lucky.
How far back does your love of this craft go, and where does it stem? When did you get the bug? Can you tell me that story?
Yeah, I think that it was very natural for me. It wasn't so much of a mystery because my father loved literature. He was a writer and a professor, and my mother was a soprano. And so I grew up with a kind of, she was a coloratura soprano and then eventually a voice professor at George Washington.
Okay.
And so I kind of grew up, our church was the arts, and, without having it explicit. So I kind of ended up taking to it in a rather natural way. Oops, sorry about that.
You're okay.
In a rather natural way. Yeah. And so it came very naturally, and it wasn't until college really that that it really kicked off in a way that seemed so natural. And it's also seductive. I was painting as well and writing, but the physical communication, the tangible sensuality of performing and the give and take with an audience is so seductive. It's a different kind of high than other things when it's an individual pursuit. So that really struck me. And then I got sent over to England on a little fellowship to do philosophy and literature there. And in England, theater was so serious that my view of it kind of changed. There was no kind of like rah, la stuff, look at me. It was very political, often, especially the students, as you would imagine, doing things that are as radical as they could be. They wanted to shock at the time. So it brought me into it in a unique way. I finally began to have a kind of respect for the art that I think as a young culture here in America, sometimes we don't have a kind of a reverence for it.
That's the word I was about to use. Kind of that's right.
Yeah. So that really did it. And I was really lucky because my background in Shakespeare and theater, I got started in theater. I was watching last night, the other night too, and these episodes, and I really kind of saw how, as a young actor, all that theater stuff, makes a big difference when you're doing fantasy things, whether it's science fiction or other fantasy genres.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to kind of be less naturalistic without, kind of chewing the furniture up, is something that you take with theater.
And not to get too early into Netan, but there's a poise and a stature there. We can go into the Lucian Alliance in a little bit here, and the fact that they are scoundrels and ruffians, and the darkest kind of side of Han Solo. But there's also I can see the what you're saying in terms of, like, you command those rooms that you're in. You're not messing around. Those are your men, and those ships are yours now, and you are taking them.
Well, listen, I have to confess, as a guy, we're talking now tradecraft here. I learned this early in a Shakespeare play. The other actors give you your kingship. They give you your power.
I see. I
can be tough and still. I could be, angry, in the space I'm in. But when I turn my head and everybody bows, it kind of does all the work for you. And the guys I worked with were without having been told, they responded that way as actors. And when an actor does that for you, you're granted that status. So it worked well for me in that case. But I remember the first time that happened, I was doing A Winter's Tale, and there's a part where, clearly he's going crazy, and his court is behind him, and you could see they're all scared. And he turns, and in a very threatening way, he says what he's going to do, and he turns and he says, "Have I done well?" And immediately everybody kneels, and they're all, "My lord, my lord." And so the power comes from their reaction. Yeah. And the power comes from the reaction, totally. I could have done that, and somebody could be in back of me and be like, "Huh." And that would have completely destroyed any moment of power or my authority. So it's one of those working together things.
It's
that worked for that.
And I can so see that with these characters, because when they impart that, if you turn towards them and then they kind of cower, especially with the nature of the galaxy at this point, in terms of the mythology of the show, the audience has to kind of ask themselves, what has this guy done to get where he is? And I'm sure were we to ask him that, he would be very much like a Mussolini or a Hitler, or I did what I had to do to feed my people under oppressive circumstances by this parasitic creature that has taken over the galaxy for thousands of years. And I'm sure Netan would say, I did what I had to do.
Yes, exactly. I think you hit it on the head also. And I love that you love villains, because
they're such fun.
An actor, it's so much fun. And as an actor, they're more fun to play usually, just because they have to be the spark of that story part. And I remember it was an early acting professor of mine. He was saying to me, "Eric, you have to understand something. You're trying too hard. You see, that you have to understand the villain. He doesn't think of himself as a villain. He's the hero. It's his story." And I kind of tried to take that into all the guest stars I've done in any show. Often, many of them kind of the bad guy or the suspected bad guy. And you just have to, when you're working on it, you're not thinking, you're not glowering and lurking in the thing. You're just thinking, I've got to get this done. I'm the guy. It's my story. So that helps too. It's like an old trick. It's just your perspective, how you're going to approach it personally, and not, making assumptions for the audience or for the plot.
That's right. Do your part, have some fun, and let the rest unfold. Trust the documents that you've taken in and that everyone is using to make this thing happen.
Yeah. And that's also a great thing about stepping into a production like this. The people were incredibly welcoming. And they're used to working, as you know, with this type of plot structure where you have this recurring person they bring back and they incorporating different elements of this storylines. And so it's very ingenious the way they did it, because not only were they personally very welcoming to me, and so it's a wonderful feeling as an actor to go and have great people take care of you, but they also, you can see how they're also adept at drawing the audience into care about somebody. So when they are eventually killed, which of course they will be at some way most, or taken away, there's a feeling to it. It's not just a kind of adjunct thing. The audience, without knowing it, just over those periods of time, a short period of time really, but there's a reaction to that character, whether it's good or bad. You might be glad to see him go. It doesn't really matter. The point is they've been there in a way, that seed has been planted by the production, by the way they're shooting it. I thought that was very ingenious.
Well, I think the worst reaction is indifference. So if you can get a positive or a negative reaction from an audience member, you've done your job.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Let's step back from Netan for a minute. Is there a role, perhaps in theater, that you've done that has remained glued to you ever since, that you've never really shook, or an experience that you've had that's like, this is one that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life? Have you been lucky enough to have an experience like that you can share?
Yeah, I think it would have to be, for me, Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet, because that was the first time they gave me the kind of responsibility of being, of carrying one of those leads, an important part. And I was very young. And then over the next, I was at Actors Theater of Louisville. And then I did it a bunch of theaters. So I played the role 3 or 4 times in different cities. And Romeo and Juliet was never one of my favorite plays, but that guy was always one of my favorite guys in all of theater. And it seemed to me there was something so perfect about the structure of this part. He comes on, he just explodes all over everybody, and has this incredible death scene too. So you yearn for him later. It's kind of structurally perfect as a role.
Shakespeare, structurally perfect? No.
Right. Surprise, right? This bum. Yeah, it was glorious. So I think I would say that role really defined me in ways that, in fact, I was at a barbecue the other day and we were being loud and somebody says, "Oh, look, we're a little loud. We ought to be a little quiet." And the first thing that came to my mind was a line from the play, which is they all like, "Hey, Mercutio, let's get out of here. Benvolio and Romeo, it's so hot. Things might happen. We're going to be in trouble." And he just looks at him and he says, "Men's eyes were made to look, and let them gaze. I budge for no man's pleasure eye." And I just, for some reason, certain lines, 20 years later, you can't not think of them. They're so good. And so, yeah, I've had a few occasions with that. I've been lucky to have that with a number of theater things. And there's even a few things in television which are memorable, not so much because they were such great moments, but because I learned something important on them. I learned something, as a craftsman, you learn your craft little by little. And I found that it's always from being on the job that I learn the most, despite taking classes and studying. You can study all you want, but then you're faced with a veteran actor. And it's just the kind of thing
and
where
there's application.
Yes. And there's also the kind of absolute terror of having to match up with somebody who is, just gifted beyond your means yet. You're not there. And so you better bring something. I remember I was doing I was just going to mention the funniest. It stuck with me. I was on a kind of a B or C movie up in San Francisco, and the actor I was working with was the great Sam Elliott. You know, the kind of Western, just a brilliant actor, brilliant guy. And what? Oh yeah, that voice, right? The voice. And he and I were doing a scene on the docks, and somebody had been murdered, and I'm basically the cop who the hero comes to. He says, "What happened here?" And I'm like, "Look, we got something bad," and I'm the guy who tells him what happened. And we take a break, and he gives me a cigar, and so I'm this young actor, and I'm smoking a cigar with him, and he says, "You doing all right, kid?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a little worried. There's so much information. How am I going to get all this information out there? There's so many guys stabbed. This." He's like, "Kid, just throw it away." And I was just, what? Like, just throw it away, kid. Like you ain't saying nothing.
Oh, don't worry about. Stop
and that
worrying
was his
about
advice
it.
to me. Yeah. Just say it like it's a list. Just throw it away. It's nothing. And so we did the scene next, and I was like, he's like, "Hey, what do you got, Jerry?" And I'm like, "Sir, we got a terrible scene. We got 4 guys dead, and they stabbed on the thing." Right? Like it was nothing, right? Like I was reading a grocery list, and he was absolutely right. Just like the way we're talking about acting. Well, you do this, you train the thing, and it's just work. It's my job. What do you want? And so little moments like that, these kind of things really, are the lessons that I take away and I'll never forget.
There is. So one of the things that I have had to remind myself of, and something that you said about Mercurio is something that I actually live my life by. I have for the last third of my life, half of my life, been very much like the line that you gave, which I loved. The version that I take with it is, if I'm in a situation, I'm not going to cause trouble, but I'm also going to accept the fact that if there's an opportunity for me to pick up a story that I can share for the rest of my life, that's the route that I'm going to take. It's not to say that I want this to go down poorly, but make your day interesting. Say something that may make someone go, get a reaction out of somebody. Be willing to accept the call to adventure in your life and not just be on cruise control. Mercurio is not going to, he has his own reasons too. And Harold Perrineau played him amazing. I think he's my favorite version of that in terms of on screen. But
that film version is brilliant.
Oh man, he's the best in that as far as I'm concerned. There is something to be said for that. Leguizamo was good too. That's true.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Great foil.
And just accept the fact. The other part of it is, in terms of what you were saying about reading the list and everything else, accept the fact that you've been brought on for a job. They trust you to execute this. Don't overthink it. You haven't been brought on to overthink it. You've been brought on to execute what's on the page, and accept that people have seen in you that you can deliver it. So you've already got the job, and just do it. Get out of your own way. Whatever that job is in life.
That's so right. That's right. But what's strange, I mean, you say that, and you're right, David. I mean, but I have to say, it's been one of the biggest struggles for me as an actor is exactly that, is granting yourself some license to, not to be worried, basically, because you're so kept in a state as a performer of, you need, an audience. You need to be given the job. You need a production. You can't just go out like a painter and paint, right? Or give yourself license or write. And I will say there wasn't really a place where I got to, but it was a long period of years before I could just give myself license to take chances and to do something like, if you're doing takes, say you do 5-10 takes of a scene. I remember somebody saying to me once, it was perfect. It's just like what you were saying. One of the takes should be the opposite of your instinct. just do one take that is completely the opposite
And see what happens.
and commit to it. Yeah, see what happens. It's going to be thrown away anyway if they don't like it. But for you as the performer, right? If you're, the brooding villain in one, but in one take you decide just to literally find it hysterical. For some reason, it's absolutely hysterical for you in that moment. Sometimes that just gives you a lesson, a quick jolt of like, oh, there's a moment in here I'm missing, or there's a whole meaning I'm missing. And I should have been doing this completely differently. It's much more powerful this way. So I agree with you. It's like a certain confidence you have to give yourself so you can make the most egregious mistake. And for once, as a professional, not worried about being fired every second. Which,
that's right.
I've spent years on every job wondering, oh God, they're going to fire me in 5 minutes, So, yeah, I think that kind of bravery, or whatever you want to call it, is very important.
A willingness to be spontaneous. I mean, if you're on the clock and every second matters, that may not be the situation, the time to do it. But if there is some of that leeway and you have a thought to travel down that direction. Colin Cunningham and I have talked a lot about that kind of thing where you just, he loves taking things in an off the wall direction because, especially in his auditions, because it's like, if I'm not going to get this, at least if I don't feel that there's a good chance, I'm going to entertain myself for this short duration. And a lot of the times he's found that he's succeeded in that result. And also the give and take from another actor, like having the presence of mind to catch those moments. I don't know if you've seen Twin Peaks, but there is a scene in season 2, the first episode, between Dale Cooper and a llama. And this llama, he's in the scene, he's in a veterinary clinic and he's walking by and this llama gets in his face as he's walking by and the llama goes, and so Dale goes, meh. And it was just on the day, that moment, but he was so present and it's in the episode and it's brilliant. So being spontaneous and accepting the fact that spontaneity can happen to you and being ready to just go with it can unlock all kinds of possibilities for that camera to suck it in.
Oh, it's beautiful moments like that. Amen.
That's right.
Now, wait a minute. How do you come to love the art, love this particular, where was your genesis at being drawn in to the arts?
I grew up on my dad's lap watching Star Trek at 3 years old. And so, yeah, the original series and Next Generation. Tuesday nights, I was between my folks in the big bed with a thing of popcorn, watching Next Gen. And those are the formative years of my life. And so, Star Trek and I are there is no daylight between us, and it's just always been kind of like so. It's just expanded out from there. So,
yeah.
Yourself,
for me too, Star Trek was massive for me. I remember. Listen, Sulu was the only Asian American on television at the time, so just for that, I was glued. But everybody else was spectacular in their own way. Uhuru, especially. These were the color of the shirts, the kind of weaving in of the mythology and the kind of morality of it all, consciousness of that. It was unlike anything else. So that was a gigantic force for me too, I have to say. I didn't know I wanted to be an actor, but I was just blown away. Absolutely.
And there's something that's outlandish about it. Sulu's controlling that. He's piloting that ship with 2 rocker switches. He's working those 2 things, man. There's just, it's the point is that we get it. We're being teleported and we're being conveyed elsewhere. And that's what you're doing with Stargate as well. Tell me about Netan. Who is this guy to you? Yeah. Because you sat down and thank you so much for rewatching your arc. I'm thrilled that you have. What is your takeaway now? And what was your takeaway then in reading the material? Who was this guy?
Yeah, my takeaway now I'll start with, because it's one of those things I'm sure you're familiar with. You look back and you're just like, wish I had done. I could have done so much more. When I look at it as a total, I'm like, wow, I had no sense of it, how it was all going to loop together. I just trusted them, of
Right.
course, which is good because it frees you up, right? You're not worried about this and that. You're not trying to connect dots. But I look back on it and I'm like, oh, I could have just brought so much more to him. But of course, that's what I think about every role, basically, I played, especially ones where you get to come back and really sketch things out.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, for me, I really latched on to the fact that he was a mercenary. And I related to that because as an actor, you're a mercenary. There's no home. And so the one thing that actually funny thing is I was reminded about what bothered me about the Lucian Alliance when I was there on set. They gave us those uniforms with these insignia. And it always kind of irked me a little bit. I was like, I wonder if we should be so corporate. I kind of get the sense that we should be a little rougher. Like we wouldn't have the same clothes on. We might not have uniforms.
I'm
frankly,
thrilled you brought this up.
Because we're such a bunch of like you say, smugglers and traffickers and drugs and the whole thing. So my view was, wow, we're really sorted out and suited up for this.
They want to look like that.
Because of that, though. Yeah. And but of course, as an actor, you just accept whatever. But yeah, and when I first got there, I latched in on the mercenary thing, and I felt like this guy essentially got to where he was by coldly killing people and surgically getting rid of anybody in his way. And if you only do that a few times, you get to be in charge of something that's bigger than yourself. And I assume that that's how he got in. It's a matter of cunning and just a quick willingness to execute somebody right there.
Oh, yeah. In the truest sense of the word.
And I kind of went on that. Yeah.
Go ahead. Please.
I also kind of liked the fact that the guys who I was working with, who were playing the Alliance, they all had separate approaches too, without any of us coordinating, which was perfect for the plot, really. And actually served us really well in every way, including working on the scenes together. Mm-hmm. Everybody I worked with, the other actors, made it easy. They were all right there in their parts, playing it beautifully. And so that helped me out a lot. It also helped me with him, I think, because we were prompted by the formality of the Lucian Alliance, which is not necessarily what I thought it was going to be. It allowed me to focus my guy, to focus Netan into something that was more precise, a little more controlled than I thought he was going to be. So less physically imposing, more psychically, mentally imposing, more will-wise. Especially when you're working with actors that good and who are also like Teal'c, who's so powerful and has that ability. You can't match that with it. You've got to take a different approach. And so all of that kind of worked to help form how I thought of him as kind of on the edge, clipped and curt and, self-assured, but they wrote him with an interesting quality, self-assured and cruel. But you see when he gets with Keflin in those moments, there's a strange kind of friendship, kind of strange familiarity of like all of a sudden he's so much softer than he was with his own guys. And that fascinated me too, even though that wasn't so much a conscious thing that was written in. And so you're there. All of a sudden you're like, oh, okay. There's this friendship side to him. And that was fascinating.
I'm really thrilled to get into Keflin with you here in a minute. This is fascinating to me. May I ask how tall you are?
Yeah, 6 foot even.
Okay. I love that. I'm recalling, it's been a while since I've seen a lot of these episodes, but I'm recalling that you were often not the biggest guy in the room. And I think that there is a part of him that is very comfortable in his own skin and has accepted the fact that all of these people will die for him because of what he has done, to get where he has gotten, to keep these people alive. I very much get that impression with this that, I mean, if were we to corner him in a room and say, look, you are a genocidal maniac, it would be like, I did what I had to do, and my people are here. And so I'm not going to apologize for that. But I really have always gotten the sense that his strength has been from within and not from without. Like, he doesn't throw his weight around unnecessarily. You don't have a lot of scenes of yelling and screaming. And there's the other portion of it is that I find it very interesting. Their uniforms, and they have rank. That's Netan's idea. Like, okay, now these ships are just that we've just found them laying around the galaxy. We're going to gather them all up together, and we're going to give ourselves these uniforms, and we're going to have a command structure, and we're now going to play military. And the Lucian Alliance are effectively playing military while now being the ones that are brutalizing the galaxy. I mean, meet the old boss, the new boss, same as the old boss. They just don't demand that you worship them. But they'll get you hooked on corn.
That's right. That's fascinating. I'd never thought about it quite that way. But the idea of them basically forming a de facto, military wing out of all these odds and ends, and my father used to write about this. Basically, they grant themselves political legitimacy with those uniforms, with the ranks, all of a sudden they are deciding we're not just stragglers or killers and drug runners.
Yeah, now that they have the technology.
Official.
That's right.
That's right.
But they haven't earned it intrinsically. They just took it. That's all they did. Just like the Goa'uld.
That's right.
The Goa'uld took the technology that they had. They didn't earn anything to get it. And so the result is you've got these crazy people running around with guns, and it's just bedlam. But still, they recognize that they do have to feed people. There has to be some measure of control. And so Netan is dancing that on that line.
Yes, I think you hit on something really important. I think I was trying in some way, without knowing it, to embody that, in a sense that my concept of Netan, and this part I was conscious, but I just assumed essentially, and this is I'm not going to get political here, but I have to. I mean, this is the time we're in. We're in a war, and you fire off a few missiles, and it becomes easier and easier to use that force in a way that is the thing that gives you legitimacy.
I don't need to listen.
And
I'll just where's my missiles?
Yeah, that's right. I know this works, and I know I'm good at it. I'm going to do. And so he almost assumed that control and that legitimacy just by virtue of being the one willing to kill this guy, to blow that ship up, to take the cargo from just essentially to say this is how it's going to be. And that's the only line that often is separating a collective and a kind of and a tyranny of evil men. And we see that now, of course, in our lives. But I think that was something interesting that was reflected in that storyline, that there was, like you say, there's a masking of a kind, what's really just a brutal kind of greedy kind of effort, and it's cloaked in the legitimacy of an alliance and of order and a kind of logic, when really it's a smash and grab, albeit an organized one.
That's right.
It's a motivated by the same things.
One of the things that I loved about Stargate Universe is that it expanded the story of the Lucian Alliance through Mike Dopood, who played a character by the name of Varro. I always thought it was just ridiculous that they didn't just give him this same character, just give him Odi Ventrell. They could have easily done that from season 10. Yeah. A great character. I loved Bounty. But he talks about the fact that, look, we grew up in the slums. We had nothing. The Lucian Alliance gave us something, gave us a North Star that we could all at least face in the same direction and start getting our butts in gear, because there was nothing left when the Goa'uld fell. I was working on Stargate Worlds, the video game, as a member of the marketing team back in 2007 and 2008, and we were depicting Lucia, the planet, and it was slums. I'll send you images of Lucia. We designed the planet, and it's dirty, and it's polluted, and it's congested, and it's cornfields, and that's all. And these people, they had nothing left. So they had nothing left to lose when they went out further into the galaxy. And when you give a person the ability to bombard a city from orbit, all bets are off.
Yeah. That's right. I think you're absolutely right. I'm not going to bring it into the modern world anymore.
No,
but I would love to see.
It's fun to play.
Images.
Yeah, I will.
Because in my head, I love it, because I tried to conceptualize that back when I was, as a young actor, you're taught how to make everything specific in your mind, and the more it becomes a specific image. And yet, when I was doing this show, I really relied on everybody there and everything else to give me that legitimacy, because I was thinking things that were, so far afield, right? That they may or may not have had any bearing to the rest of the storyline that led up to me being involved. And again, you put yourself in the hands of the people you're working with, and they'll give you that legitimacy and that connection. A lot of us actors, when we're starting, you get used to working with people who have been there a while, and you're the guy in for a week, 2 weeks, that's it, and you're out. And they're used to working with people like that. So there's a real ease at coming together, and we're not going to get bogged down. We got this here, and it's going to move. Everything's moving, and the people involved are moving and changing, and so you learn to kind of swing with it. And I know that I really benefited from the actors on the cast, because they were great at that. You just step right in and you're playing together, and it's not, oh, who's this new guy? Let me get to him, or how we're going to do this scene. They're all old hands at coming.
They've been doing this forever at this point. They know these characters inside and out, like old leather. Yeah,
it's true. And I have to say also that, this is not part of the story, but this is part of the production. The entire production crew, this was the first time I'd ever been in Vancouver. And I was just welcomed up there, and I just couldn't believe the city. I couldn't believe how kind people were to me. I couldn't believe, there was this one great time too. They overbooked the hotel we were in, and they had to keep me in by contract, right? To a hotel. Yeah, they had to keep me into the area, right? So the only hotel outside that was in the area that was close was the Four Seasons. So they had to put me up at the Four Seasons. And so little things, there was such a delight to so much of what was happening to me. As a young actor, I'm there, I'm just delighted. Overall, in every way, I was delighted by the city, by the staff. They treated me great. The costumes, makeup, the production, the camera crew was spot on. Everybody, great experience for an actor to go there in a new city, be enchanted by everybody. Also be able to play in these broad, dramatic strokes. It was a great experience for me. So it holds a special place in my heart to this day.
Yeah.
And I actually even have a couple of friends in Vancouver still to this day, just from those experiences. So I'm incredibly grateful. I know this is off topic, right?
This is all of a piece. We're here for the production stuff as well. Kyle Brooks wants to know, what did you look forward to most? Your favorite aspect of coming back to this show time and again? What ultimately became your favorite thing?
My favorite thing, to be honest, was the character and the feel of what I got to do. I love the idea that I got to toy with being that guy. In my view, the hero, but of course, in the view of the film, of the piece, clearly a villain. But I mean, I liked him because he's more interesting than the star.
No, he's suave.
Guys, and yeah. So I mean, that was the best part. For an actor, I could be in Bakersfield. It doesn't matter to me if I get to play something interesting with those edges, and I get to play with great people. That's all I need. And then the fact that it's in this genre, which allows me to play, with more colors than we usually can, because we're in another world, and there's this whole other universe. And it's those things. And then everything else on top of that is gravy. The great seafood up there, the great people, and look, how Canadians are some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. All of this adds to a joy going to work. You're just happy to go to work. And yet I'm happy when I get a job in the Valley or I'm doing a show, Young and Restless. It doesn't matter. I'm happy as an actor to do it. But this was a confluence of great things, great role, great people, great city, delightful.
There is.
Literally, there were no problems. There was no. I wish this was this. I wish this was. There was none of that ever.
When you got the role, before you got the role, did they indicate at that point to you that this could be recurring? One of the themes on Dial the Gate very much has been. I've been lucky enough to talk with a number of folks at this stage, and a lot of the actors say that they're not baiting them specifically, but they're basically saying, this could be recurring. Did they give you that indication up front that this was not going to be likely a one-off, or that it was going to be likely a one-off? Where did that fall for you in terms of the potential for, look, if you're the top dog here and this is a potential returning antagonist in terms of this group of people, they're going to have to explain you away somehow if you're not there.
Yes, that's right. Exactly right. It's so funny. I'm not sure behind the scenes how much of it was a particular truth, like that they were baiting or whatever. I do know, though, that as an actor, often they will get you to do a part. As an actor, you're always trying to get better, to do more. And often your representatives, your agents might say, look, Eric's just got off this and he's doing this. This part is only a few scenes. Really? You can't give him something more? And they're like, okay, listen, fair. This could be a big part. We could, and you never know, right? Because a lot of people say that, and you never know whether they're actually serious or they're baiting you and it's a one-shot deal. But you know what? This guy is right. He's done more. He deserves to, tell him something. Let's do it. Like, people will try to hire you for a co-starring kind of role, a smaller role. And they say, look, make it a guest star. We'll give him one more scene. We'll call it a guest star. You get paid more, and then you'll do it, right? And you're like, okay, fine. We'll compromise. In this case, it was one of those situations where of course, I'm like, I pray that it's serious, that's really could be. I guess I really hope they bring this guy. I hope it's recurring, but I don't know. They could just be, using me. But at the same time, this is interesting. This would be fun. Yes, let's do it. And if it's not recurring, it's not recurring. Okay, what? It'll still be a great experience. And so I didn't know whether it was going to be something. I just thought, okay, let's go up and let's give them something special. Let's do the best we can do. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. They'll hire some,
You've done the best you
they'll
could.
Kill them off or whatever.
Yeah, you've done your part, and your back is, you stood up straight and said, yeah, this was my take on this, and
right.
They didn't like it.
I knew my word.
Oh well,
I hit the mark. Right, exactly, and that's the attitude you have to have in this business always, anyway, right? Because they'll just fire you. Right. And luckily, as it turns out, the production crew turned out to be not cutthroat, but incredibly warm and kind. And they gave me that chance. But at the time, I didn't know whether it was going to come. But again, back to how they structured the entirety of the piece. They were very smart because they began to do this. I saw with other people. You know, there's a funny story. I'd done some stage work with another actor, Tony Amandala, and he appeared in a number of, and and he's a great guy. We did some work for the Mark Taper Forum in LA, and there are a number of people like that. And I remember we talked about this once years later, and it was great because I felt a little bit, well, I guess I'm doing all right. Because he was saying, you know, that was my approach too. You never know what you're going into. You bring the fullness of everything you can bring, and you let the chips fall where they may. And, you know, in my case, it worked out well. But I'm sure that had I not been able to be as effective in the beginning, well, they would find some other way to clip that story, kill him off, and bring somebody to usurp him, which would have worked as well. Right? It would have worked just as well. So you hope they're telling the truth when they say we might stretch this out, but you never really know until they do, you know?
And the fact of the matter is,
it's a contractual kind of leverage thing.
Yeah. And if they don't feel that you're working, they're not going to bring you back, but they clearly did.
That's right.
You know, so that's the nice, there are situations that I know of personally where that's right, where your successors, in some cases, they were, I'm going to shut my mouth right now. But if you're not happy with the performance, you build structures into the story so that you can replace them later. So I will just say that. Right. But yeah, how aware were you? I completely missed this one. How aware were you of Stargate before Netan? Had you seen the show? I mean, you're clearly a sci-fi fan.
I'm a sci-fi fan. I'd seen the show. I'd seen the first film as well. You know, and it's interesting because the concept, the literal physical concept of the gate, is such a fascinating way to enter into it. I feel like that was I mean, I know it's the title, obviously, but the crux of the fascination with entering into the world, literally and then metaphorically. So that's what first got me when I saw that, and I saw the gate, the ability, that entryway into other universes, other worlds, other times. So that grabbed me immediately. And of course, when they were going to do the show, I mean, that too was incredibly enticing. Of course, I hoped that I would get to enter into these gates and physically people, but my character never did.
No, he flew around in ships.
That was the first thing that got to me. That's right. That was the first thing that got to me. I also loved, like I do with a lot of sci-fi and television, I love the fact that when you're showing different species of aliens, when you're showing different people and different cultures coming together, there's a looseness to it on TV. You're allowed a little bit more latitude to not be so, you know, hyper-realism, especially nowadays the trend is I guess nowadays the trend has gotten a little more colorful, a little more, I guess, Guardians of the Galaxy kind of allowed. Yeah, with more humor and more kind of camp. But back then, you know, that was kind of reserved for the television side of it. Like we talk about original Star Trek. There's a sense of seriousness, of it, but there's also a sense of joy to it, a sense of whimsy at times.
That's the word.
And yeah, and there was that on Stargate too. You could see it very clearly with some of the regulars, some of the leads played very much on the edge of the humor constantly. And I found that kind of delightful, and I found it also kind of very unique. Even when I did other shows, like I remember I did an episode of an old sci-fi show, Babylon 5. And it was a fascinating concept and a fascinating thing to do the show because it was very low budget, right? It was all kind of put together very quickly and
but it was taken very seriously.
The same kind of sense. Yeah. Yes, taken very seriously, and with some great actors. Oh my God, I arrived on set at Babylon 5, and the guy I was doing my scenes with was an old British actor named Aubrey Morris. He was in Stanley Kubrick movies, this guy. I mean, he played memorable parts in Clockwork Orange. And there I am, a young actor working on Babylon 5 with scenes with this guy. I mean, it was... So there's a sense of in Stargate, there's a slight touch of how, I don't know how I would describe it, but there's the seriousness of the weight of the story, but there's also that slight sense of otherworldness, of campness, of occasionally humor. And I personally love that, and I find that incredibly unique. I think it preceded the kind of marvelous kind of way of doing some over-the-top kind of fun stuff, meta commentary, and humor inserted into the fantasy.
No, there's so much going on so many levels, to the point where in many cases they're almost winking directly at the audience, but they're not. And that was Richard Dean Anderson. He set that standard from the beginning, and the writing and everything else. Those two just kind of feathered together perfectly. Are you tight for time, or are we good?
No, you're fine.
Okay, because I don't want to.
Yeah, we're fine.
I want to be respectful of your time, but at the same time, I have a lot more stuff to ask.
No, please do.
I want to step aside for a second and ask about Star Trek: First Contact, finally being on the franchise that you loved, and an intense part of the movie. I remember sitting in the theater, not to date myself, but I was 13, and man, the heebie-jeebies. That Frakes did a great job. That was one of the scariest theatrical experience I ever had. And I grew up with the Borg, and I'm sitting there going, man, part of this sucks. This is intense.
Yeah. Oh my God.
What was it like playing Paul?
What a prince of a guy. Yes. Oh my Lord. Yeah, thank you for asking about that. That was such a great thing. Like you say, I was a huge fan. So to be involved was a joy. And Frakes was a prince of a guy. And just to give you an idea, one day I'm talking with Frakes and Patrick Stewart. And of course, just to be around Patrick Stewart as a Shakespearean guy. Who knew him? I was overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you another story about Patrick Stewart. Years later, I'm doing a play in San Francisco. My parents come to see me, and we're out to dinner at a lovely, fancy place. Patrick Stewart walks in, and my mom and dad, knowing him from RSC, are like, "Oh, it's Patrick Stewart." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do this. It might be my only chance." I foolishly walk over to his table.
Is he eating?
Mr. Stewart,
he doesn't like to be disturbed while he's eating.
Yeah, I know. And I was very nervous, but I knew I might not ever have the ability, the cachet in front of my parents. I had to see. And I go over to him, "Mr. Stewart, I'm so sorry to bother you. Listen, I worked with you a brief time, just a little while ago in Los Angeles on the first guy." He's like, "Oh, of course." I said, "I'm Eric Steinberg." "Oh, of course, Eric." "Yes, indeed." And I said, "It's so wonderful to see you. I never got to thank you." And, my parents are there. They're big fans. They saw, they'd seen the Royal Shakespeare. He said, "Of course, I'll come say hello to your parents." And he came right over across the restaurant to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Steinberg, to work with your son was a joy. Incredibly professional. Just a delight. I'm so proud. You must be so proud." And I mean, he made me look like a king. My parents were aghast. I was aghast. And I got a tear in my eye thinking about it now, because he, again, like great actors do, he lends you your legitimacy. He lends you your power. And he didn't have to do any of that. And here's the thing. When I was on the set with them, I had a couple of days, we're shooting this thing. They know I'm a young actor. This is the thing. And we're talking together about the scene, and Jonathan Frakes goes, "Well, how long do we have Eric for?" to the assistant director. And the assistant director, "Oh, we got him this week." And he's like, "Okay, well, he gets bored, and we haven't. We could easily use him the next week for the other Borg scenes." And the other guy
show
said,
some
yeah,
continuity
we can
because
lock
we
him up.
don't. I'm assuming
Yeah,
it was
not
scripted
just
that
for some-
we don't see him in the Jeffries tube. I'm assuming that it's scripted that it just zooms in on her and that's
Yeah.
it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's right. And the thing about it was they were even doing me a favor technically. Like they understood that another week of work on a Paramount
That's
set
right.
at full union wages for a young actor like me, I mean, that means a lot.
Yeah.
And they did that for me, not just for their benefit, but they were extending themselves, because my gig was going to end. It was,
That's right.
And they were like, put him on for another week. Let's put him on. And I was so grateful and moved. And everybody I worked with, oh my God, I had such a good time working with the Borg Queen. I can't remember her
Alice
name
Krieger.
at the time. Alice Krieger, that's it. She was brilliant and a wonderful actress too. And I actually remained friends with Marnie, the girl who was in the tube with me for many years. She's a delight too. Yeah, it was a joy to be on the set. It was a joy to be on Paramount lot at the time. It was a joy to be involved in Star Trek in any respect.
Man. Yeah.
It was a joy. It was a joy.
That is so cool.
I went back and I did their show, but I was in full kit, full makeup as an alien.
Give us the Equinox.
But I had a grant. That's
dude. It's my bread and butter. I'm telling you, guys. The flying fish want you dead.
That's right. And the funny thing is, when I played that role, I was disappointed, almost more so, not being able to go back, because even though you get the makeup and the whole thing, it's actually a joy to be at work and not even think about what you look like, not to be worried or self-conscious at all, because you're completely transformed.
That's right.
And that is so freeing. You just want to keep working that way because you don't have to worry about looking at playback. Oh, how do I look? Oh, I didn't look. You're not thinking about that at all. You're just thinking about your role, your intentions, what's happening. And, despite what we all say, even though, I've been doing this for a while, I still don't look at things because I hate to be self-conscious about the way you can always think, I should look better. Why don't I look, this is, and to be completely free of that is a glorious thing.
Man, and that makeup, is that the first time you'd had a head cast?
First time. Yeah.
I've
been in different makeups before, but that was a full,
Michael Westmore,
it was amazing.
I've heard amazing stories.
These guys were so legendary, and what was amazing is I didn't really know how legendary until I got there. I didn't realize the reputation that they had kind of throughout the entire industry, certainly in the genre, but obviously, there's a reverence to the work they've done all the way back. And once you get there and you see the pictures and you see the history and you start talking to people, you realize you're in the presence of, real legends, real industry kind of royalty, and not just for those of us who love sci-fi, but everybody in the industry knows who these guys are. Yeah. They're whether you do sci fiction or not, everybody knows them, and
they're the gold.
They're
standard.
Awarded often. Yeah, that's right. So it was a joy in a way, and something that I, taught me to. It's that side of it. Here's this other side, physically disciplined. Be disciplined. You get there at 5 a.m. or whatever it is to put all this stuff on. Calm yourself, get in a Zen state. Just what's necessary, and slowly let them apply. Let them do their work. And while you're doing that, it's very meditative. You're just kind of closing your world a little bit closer, and you focus in. In a way, it's kind of a cool meditative exercise. So by the time you step on set, there's no thought. You're already somebody else in every way. You're moving different. You're thinking different. You've entered the world. So that makeup stuff that entire process is arduous, but incredibly helpful too.
The thing for me
in a craft way.
Oh, and very much that. My problem would be the heat. Like I've put on those form-fitting skull caps that the Jaffa wear, and when one is on, you are I am dripping sweat. If I'm like walking around working, which I was when I was doing this, we sold the props. I couldn't. I was like, get this thing off. Like I'm done. Like how do you you're wearing it for the full day?
Yeah, full day. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, frankly, the Borg thing it was more difficult because it was the suit was on you, so you had to kind of going to the bathroom becomes an ordeal. So that was more difficult. But yeah, you like I say, it's a great exercise in discipline. You have to force your body into and your mind into a place where you can endure that. And at first it's hard, but it gets better, as you can imagine. It gets better quickly. But yeah, there are a number of places. I love that you have the in the back there. I see the torture implement.
Oh,
I forget what it's called. But
just a second here.
That's so great that you have that. I recognize it immediately.
It's one of the few things that didn't get a name. It's a Goa'uld torture stick, and most of the Goa'uld devices had their own name, but this one is actually from Stargate Continuum. I don't usually bring it to the foreground very much, and you absolutely know all about this, so this is a good point.
I do. I love it. I saw it there. I was like, yeah, it's familiar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So great.
The craftsmanship of production.
Yes.
They did such a good job. And the stuff has lasted for years. Stargate.
That's amazing.
It's an extraordinary production, and it's coming back. What do you think?
That's amazing to me. I mean, look, it's hard for me to judge without being personally, affected by it, because normally, like everybody in our society, normally I'm getting a little tired of regenerating things from my past, my childhood.
Yep.
Like we all are, because it seems like there's a kind of glut of that. But for this, I absolutely love it, because I feel like it would benefit greatly from just how easy it is now to generate these worlds and these effects, how much more sophisticated it is. I mean, just the possibilities are just enormous. So I would love to see it. I'd also love to see what they do with the characters, how they're gonna bring these people back, how far they're gonna, divert from the original structure.
Mm-hmm. It's same universe, but that doesn't shackle them to the circumstances of that world. What are they going to do next? They can take it in different ways.
Right. That's right, and I'm sure they will, because they'll be aware of the pratfalls of, rebooting something in a way that I don't know. I mean, doesn't it? Not insult is the wrong word, but demeans the past, right? You've got to go forward in a way that kind of holds some reverence to the source material. You've got to have some kind of respect. I think that's one of the things that people haven't liked about a lot of the sequels and reboots of many of the science fiction stuff. They felt, I think a lot of the audience felt like there wasn't a lot of respect for
reverence,
the traditions, especially, say, with Star Trek. I knew a lot of people who felt like the Star Trek they were given, despite being so much more sophisticated with effects and technologically, incredibly extraordinary, like a roller coaster, but at the same time they felt it lost some of the kind of noble purpose and story writing, the storytelling of the original, and the feel of that. I guess that's the best way to put it, the purposefulness of the original, that legacy.
There is a decorum to Star Trek that it tonally has, that is not so much. Rick Berman made the comment, like they're saying high five in the 32nd century. I mean, the language is no longer Shakespearean and sophisticated anymore, to a large degree, and you can audience members respond to that. Some like it, some don't like it. And
Yeah.
what are you going to do? That's the art. That's just the process.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. Do you think that there has been for you, well, first two questions. What do you see or are looking forward to in the new iteration? And two, do you know of what is for you is a fantasy or science fiction story that they've been able to redo in a proper way, or in a way that does not denigrate the original, like a Blade Runner, a new Blade Runner? Where does that land for you in
2049
in the spectrum?
Is absolutely up there. So the fact of the matter is that with all of these reboots and relaunches, how many of those can you think of that behind the scenes had the participation of the original people who created it? I'm having trouble arriving at that answer. So when Martin Garrow was staring back at me,
it's true,
on a Zoom call, and they said that they were bringing it back, I knew that it was going to be okay, because Martin is involved, and Brad and Joe are Brad Wright and Joseph Malazzi are consulting producers. My one concern was that tonally, it was, if they were to bring it back tonally or continuity-wise, it would not be the same. And immediately those concerns were laid to rest. And in subsequent conversations that I've had since behind the scenes, in terms of the information that I have gleaned, what I will say is that that assuredness, that tonally, and with respect to what's come before, everything is going to be respected and cared for and maintained, and that it's still going to feel like the shows that we had before. None of that's changed. It's only been more reinforced. So yeah, I think that's rock solid. In terms of a modern take, I think that Blade Runner is an excellent example. I am a huge fan of Andor from Star Wars. Star Wars has done some hits and misses. They've proven that if you have the right story and the right writer director, you can pull pretty much anything off. Yeah. But I think the broader point that I'm trying to get to is, if you're going to bring something back, don't Trojan horse it to share exclusively what it is that you want to share, while disregarding the spirit of what came before. Don't wear the IP like a skin suit, and appreciate the whole audience, not just the half that agrees with you on your opinions.
Yeah. I think that you mentioning Andor is spot on too, because for me, that's been the most effective iteration as well, because it allows room to breathe, to meditate. It allows room. It doesn't have to be a roller coaster, a kind of sight and sound joy,
And it's
even
totally
though,
darker than
Blade
any Star Wars
Runner,
before. It's completely different that way.
Completely darker, yeah. And the darkness of it gives it weight. It gives it kind of real gravity. And Blade Runner, as gorgeous as it was, also allowed room to breathe and be silent, which gives things meaning, right? When it's just silent, it gives things. One of my favorite, when I look back on things I've watched in the past decades or so that still stick with me, one of the things is, I don't know if you've seen There Will Be Blood, the film by
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Just a brilliant film. Yeah,
there wasn't very much blood. They just got it a little bit in the bowling alley at the end. I was kind of disappointed that there wasn't more blood.
That's right. Unless it's not enough blood.
I'm sorry. That's what I was going for. I tuned in for blood.
That's right.
Damn.
I got none. I got a tiny thimbleful. Unless, of course, we talk poetically and the blood is the oil. Right, then maybe it's like, okay, it's just it's a metaphorical. But the thing I bring up about that is I remember that film so much, not just for the performance, but I remember in the beginning of the film, they have this dissonant sound. It's not really a soundtrack. It's Johnny Greenwood, I think, from Radiohead. And he gives this soundscape. And there's no talking for the first 6-8 minutes of the film. It's just sound, him alone breathing, breaking ground, and then he breaks his leg. That silence and that space, we don't have to fill this in. You're going to sit and you're going to watch. And it gives everything so much meaning and importance. And without saying a word, right? You know there's something very primal going to happen, or the stakes are enormous in this moment without anybody telling you exposition or anything. And I think when you look at all these pieces that we're talking about, all the pieces that take the moment, take the freedom, have the confidence to do a little of that, we're just going to let this sit with you. It makes everything deeper and makes it more meaningful. So my hope is that they, with Stargate, I hope that they, and I'm so happy to hear that the original maestros will be helping direct it at the ship. I mean, that does mean everything, because then you're just not, and I hope they also, allow that modern sense of gravity to weigh in. Even if they go for the humor in
places.
That's
right. It must be relevant in a modern way. It can't be exactly what came before.
Yeah.
So that's the
and I
question
don't want
is
it to
striking
be,
the balance.
I hope they don't go into the and I hope they don't go into the thing where, I'm not disparaging, Marvel at all the time. That's not how I feel. But there's a certain kind of, look, we need to have these quirky kind of self-referential jokes in almost every other scene. And, I just, not everybody has to do humor that way, right? That seems to be a very contemporary, mode of humor. But I feel you could do it better in different ways. There was an English actress on Stargate, the dark-haired woman. I never got to work with her.
You talking about Claudia Black?
Dark, curly. Yes.
Vala Maldoran? Yeah. She was Australian.
Australian, okay. It was really interesting to me because she had a different sense of going with the humor of it as well.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody had their own style of playing with it. And I love the individuality of that. And I feel like I said before, that was almost a precursor of the kind of very, very conscious, self-conscious jokes nowadays. So I'd love to see where they take it. I'd love to. I'm looking forward to seeing
absolutely
what tapestry they create.
Because humor is definitely going to be a big component of it. I know that. And Vala would fit right into into Guardians of the Galaxy. Absolutely. I've got a few more fan questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Lockwatcher, who you portrayed Agent Davis in 24 and survived. How was it working on that series?
Oh, man. That was really cool. And it kind of meant something to me personally. I loved it because it was fun to get kitted out and have all the gear and be the, but really I got to work with Julian, who, rest his soul, passed away in the mountains of Southern California
Julian
when
Sands.
He was hiking and he caught in a storm. Yeah. And rest in peace. When I was a young kid, my parents took me to see Room with a View, a great film by Merchant Ivory. And that was the start also of Helena Bonham Carter's career. Daniel Day-Lewis, again, was in that movie as a young man. And that movie had a great impact on me just because it was so romantic and beautiful. And, of course, the brilliant acting in every respect. Denholm Elliott is the old guy, the father figure for Julian. So when I came to work, I didn't know really what was going on. And Julian Sands is there, and I'm guarding him. And I was younger, so I definitely did the fanboy thing. I took my helmet, my thing. I was like, listen, I'm sorry to be bothering you, but when I was a kid, my folks took me to see you in that movie, and I still love that movie. I loved your performance in it. It was just a power that, and I was gushing. He's like, he was very, very kind. And we cut to the last day. I'm leaving the parking lot of the studio, And I see him coming off set or his trailer going to the next thing. And I yell at him, I'm like, Julian, great working with you. See you again sometime. Thanks. And he looks back at me. He says, Eric. He yells across the parking lot, beauty, truth, beauty, which is what he says in Room with a View. He's out in the field somewhere yelling, and he just sees the beauty of Italy, and he just yells out, beauty, truth. And I never asked him to do it. I never mentioned it, but he knew I loved that film, and he knew that I would know. So it was just this beautiful little moment. I had a great time working on that show. I would have loved to work even more if I would have been in one of their team. But that moment being acknowledged by Julian was so sweet, and I still think about that.
And that he
and
remembered
died,
from earlier.
Very,
oh man, no, we were devastated. He was. That's one of those interviews that I never got to have. He was so effective as the Dosai in those last those last couple of years on the show.
He's just a great
lost
actor.
Someone
he was
special.
a great actor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you hate that when it's never for a good reason, but for that kind of a accident, it's just
I know,
a bitter thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing with Cliff Simon.
Also, I mean, not that you would feel good if the guy was a jerk, but he was a prince of a guy.
That's right. It's just worse because of it.
Yeah.
Sarah Beamy, we've been talking about villains. Who from fiction is your favorite villain? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. You know, I was reading something the other day, but I think one of the best villains I've seen on film recently is from the Coen brothers, Anton Chigurh.
Oh my God. I was picturing Anton Chigurh in my mind right now. Call it. I was thinking of him. So I was going to give him as soon as you gave yours. Wow, Eric.
There you go.
Have you read the book?
See, we're in line here. Yeah.
Extraordinary. There is no more terrifying character.
Yeah, genius, the way he played it and the way the Coen brothers framed it, which is really, again, what gives the power to him, right?
That's right.
The actor who played with him in that scene in the gas station,
that's right,
was just as great an actor as he was, and was just as vital for making that one of the great scenes I've seen, basically. Yeah. And so, yes, the villain thing is very important. That's one of my favorites that I've watched. One of the favorite villains that I never got to play yet, but I'm hoping to play one day, is Iago in Othello. I would love to play Iago, just because he's such a villain, and Shakespeare is so brutally open with it. I hate the Moor, you know. But how do you play that and not play a villain? You play a hero, and that's the key. I know Patrick Stewart, as we talked about, he played a very famous versions of Iago. I never got to see them, but I've read about them. So I would love to play that. Gosh.
No, you've got to eat it up, otherwise it'll just sink.
I mean, that's right. That's right. And like we talk about, a lot of times in TV, and I guess film too, the villain is just more interesting all the time because the lead character cannot be too divergent. They have to be somewhat milquetoast, somewhat mainstream, because they're your vessel, right? They're your conduit into the thing. They can't be so interesting or dark or strange. So the villain, you know, often is just written more interestingly, more mysteriously, and those gaps are what allow you to give it some kind of, you know, something confusing, hopefully for the audience, something to, you know, like Chigurh, you know, something that makes you, what happened? He's
a machine, you know. There's no soul anymore. He's just a device, and he's crazy. I mean, he thinks that he wields fate.
But what's great though, he wields fate. But what I love about it is, it's like in Hamlet when they say Hamlet, he is mad. This is madness, but yet there is method to it.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like he has his own
his own code.
Morality. He's like people. Yeah. He has a code. Like, I love when he laughs when he's like, you don't have to do this. His victim is like, you don't have to do this. And he's like, huh. The first time you see him laugh, he's like, people always say that.
Yeah, Javier
You don't
Bardem
have to
is
do
brilliant.
this. Like he's
Yeah.
yeah, he's thought of it. He's worked it out.
Yeah. No, there is something attractive about if you look at an Anton Chigurh or a Walter White, you know, these
Oh yeah,
these kind
Walter
of
White
folks.
is a great one.
We are drawn to competent people, even if something that they do is terrible. If they're very good at it, there's something alluring about it that's interesting to watch, at least for a couple of hours. So very much so.
You know what I say? Yes, there's no question about it. There's no question about it. What is that saying? There's a saying that talent is the greatest aphrodisiac.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's true. And what you're saying is very true. It's not about but when that person is that proficient, even as a character in what they do, you're immediately fascinated by their artistry, by how good they are at killing people, at running a drug syndicate.
That's it.
You know.
Yeah. He finally admits to Skylar in the last episode, I liked it. I was good at it. And as audience members, we're going, yep, you're going to pay, but yep, that's true.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Oh, and in terms of villains, one last thing.
Yeah.
One last thing about the villains. I don't want to leave out, I can't think of it right now, but the comic villains I can't leave out because they were a big part of me growing up. I grew up watching some of the great comic villains. I remember so well, especially something like Mel Brooks, the villains in that, the great actress, what's her name, who played Van Braun, the woman who runs the castle. She passed away not long ago. She's just one of the great geniuses. She worked with Mel Brooks so many times.
Stana Katic?
No.
Van Braun, Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
Madeline Kahn?
Young Frankenstein. No, she's great too, though. I love Madeline Kahn. Oh, she's a genius too. Gone too soon.
Who ran the castle in Young Frankenstein?
Yes.
Let's get it right.
Oh, what's her name? I can't believe it's a mental
Frau
breakdown.
Blucher, played by Cloris Leachman.
That's it. Cloris Leachman, the great Cloris Leachman, who is also a villain in High Anxiety. Yeah. And so a lot of comic villains for me were very, Harvey Korman in Blading Saddles was just outrageous to me. And even in Monty Python, the villains were brilliant. So I don't know whether I'm just attracted by nature to villains, whether it's comic or the most horrific, but they're just more interesting to me than the moral signpost.
Thrilled that you bring this up because you got to play against a little bit of that in Stargate with the Oranians, Tenat and Jup. These bumbling buffoons with the most wild masks on. I mean, I think Netan kills one of them if I don't remember. I can't remember exactly the circumstances, but like these idiots who are working under you can't get anything done. Damn you, Ken Mitchell.
Right. I felt terrible about it because it was so cold. And even my men, I was cruel to the guys I was working with as well. And that felt bad too. When I rewatched the first, it was just terrible. The guy just gets beaten and I'm like, idiot, And I remember the actor was great too. He was
Morris
a really
Chapdelaine?
nice guy. And he was from Vancouver. We had but yes, it was pretty funny. And I have to say, I'm glad I didn't do it, but I easily could have ventured into the almost maniacal comic bad guy when abusing those guys. And I'm glad I didn't fully go there. But I remember when I was dealing with the alien and I was like, there was some line that I was reminded of when I watched it. I said, "You are the most pathetic example of whatever you are," or something like that. That was pretty hilarious. And the poor guy,
bigotry
his character was just, and the poor guy was just written into this, but he had to subjugate and, just be abused by everybody in that episode. It was sad, but yes.
Yeah, that's terrific.
It was funny as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you have to have characters like that who have the levity. And I think that like you had one of the trickiest roles by like how much do I dial it up or keep it where it is, recognizing the fact that I have to make this believable. Like this character has to have a desire to maintain his station. So he's aware of the politics of the men around him. He can't just beat and abuse. They'll kill him in his sleep.
That's right.
So there has to be a certain amount of respect while he also chews on his guys every now and then. It's like, guys, I'm sorry, but you're an idiot. Yeah. Like you're going to have to pay for this one.
Yeah.
Just mind blowing.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's so true. Yeah, it's true. But it's such a joy to play those roles in this space where you're given that freedom because it's a fantasy, because it's science fiction. There's a little more room. And I remember doing the scene. We had a scene in one of the episodes where, I kill one of the guys at the table.
As you do.
And he was a great actor, too. And he had a great face, right? This guy was brilliant. Great voice, great face. And we did that scene a number of times. And I remember they used a take that I didn't quite like. But the joy of being at a table with all those actors and being able to just inflict that, inject that kind of brutality in the moment and play with what that does. It's just the joy of the job. It's just the joy of what we do is getting to embody those extreme moments.
That's right. That you wouldn't be able to do in real life.
No.
Exactly.
No, not for long. Right?
Well, yeah, exactly. You got one good one, and then that's it. Then it's over. But I got a couple more questions. Are we okay, or are we good?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Perfect. Choplow 7. What was it like working with Ben Browder and Christopher Judge? Cameron Mitchell. And
oh my God, it was great. Both of them. Yeah, both of them. They were all incredibly adept and used to their roles, so there was no need to question or whatever. We basically just slipped right in. And I loved working with Teal'c as well in a different way because I really admired what he was doing with his character. He was so committed to the stillness and the control. And that gives him so much power, So working with him was awesome. Working with all of them was awesome. I loved working with the lieutenant commander as well because he was totally different. He had that great quirky kind of cocksure, approach. And
Rudolph Martin.
What was interesting for me, was the device of that alien ability to have contact with somebody and have them believe or see what they think they're seeing.
Oh, you're talking about
a fascinating device.
Ben Browder, Cameron Mitchell. Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. The ring thing. I mean, that was a really cool way of addressing that scene. It allows for so much to happen that couldn't happen, but just that one device, that kind of fantastical turn, and the guy appears to be who is familiar to him.
And we move on.
Yeah, amazing. It's amazing. And I love doing those scenes. And most of all, I loved working with Teal'c because, his stillness, the power was great to play against. I wanted to be, of course, when you're facing an actor like that, you want to be as powerful, but you just can't with him. You have to take a different approach and you have to give in, right? That his stillness is going to mean more than yours. So you've got to come at it a different way. But in general, I was incredibly pleased and honored to work with them and to learn from them, because I did learn from them. Watching professionals like that who've been doing it for a while on a show, when you're a journeyman actor and you come to it, you're taking away lessons too, because all of these people are more schooled and more aware at this process than you. So it was beautiful for me to work with them, and they were kind as well. They were really kind. There's no attitude. There's no.
That's right.
There's no. There's no rank pulled. There's no. And there is sometimes on sets. People get personal and this and that, but not there.
No, there's.
I don't know if that's a Canadian thing. Everybody I met in Canada.
It's a big working class Canadian thing for sure. Mike Goa'uld is one of my favorite people, and he kills you off screen, supposedly. That's one of my frustrations.
Right.
Is let us see it or not. Have him walk out or have him shoot him. There's especially in seasons 9 and 10 of SG-1, they really were getting to the point where, and he pulls up his weapon and we cut to black, and it's like, all right, I guess they could come back because I'm doing the Omnipedia and I'm writing all these entries down for the encyclopedia. It's like, okay, I can't mark him as dead because we didn't see it. So he could still be out there somewhere.
That's right.
But he's probably dead.
See, isn't that a science fiction?
Isn't
sure
that
a science
you can bring him back
trope
anyway.
If you don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find any reason to bring him back if you really want someone back. Yeah. Were you? Were you? When you got to that in the script when you were reading it the first time? What was your thought? It's like, well, it's been a good run, or nope, it doesn't say I'm dead. Like, what was your takeaway?
My takeaway was, it was at a time in my career where literally 80% of the roles I got, I die. And, in a way that's a function of being a type of actor or of certain kind of typecasting where you're put in certain kinds of roles where you got to be the one who somebody's going to get punished. Yeah. And so, you're getting that notion of being the guy. And I read it and I'm disappointed, of course, but there's no way that I wasn't thinking, just like you said, well, what is there to complain about? What a damn good run. What a good time I've had working with these people. There was no bad experience I had. And so I couldn't feel too disappointed. Although disappointed enough that I could write some letters or some emails and, you guys are doing this. You're in need of some nefarious types. There could always be somebody on the outskirts.
That's right.
That's right.
You
could. Here's nothing for nostalgia's sake.
Here's the thing, Eric. There are a number of actors from the original that I would love to see return, but frankly, as new characters, because enough time has passed, and y'all don't look the same. No offense. But I am fairly strategic,
not at all. You're absolutely
in
right.
my intentions with this show, and I will say that you are one of the ones that I would love to see again in another role. So it's half of the reason why you're here now.
Well, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So
much appreciated, David. Much appreciated.
There is a poise to you. The fact of the matter is, you play it for all it's worth. I imagine sometimes it's like, well, can't I just play a nice guy for a nice long arc, But if you're good at being bad, just lean into it.
You're right. And, like artists, we take what we get, we make a meal of it. Let's make a meal of it.
That's right.
But, it was a great opportunity, David. It's just, it's not enough to say, I have no complaints. It was just a wonderful experience. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing that it's made more wonderful by the fact that I get to speak to you about it today. Mm-hmm. The idea that people appreciated it in some small way. That's more than I expected, and frankly, it's incredibly gratifying. There are plenty of jobs I've done over and over, and there's no audience there. It's not like theater. There's no conversation. Job's over. Eric's last day on set. Hey, bye, everybody. You never see anybody again.
And you move on.
Never even
this
hear
has been almost 20
if
years
anybody
for you
saw
now.
it or reacted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to have to be able to express that and gratitude for it that I have, no, I'm appreciative to you. I really am,
absolutely.
and I'm deeply appreciative to you for noticing, for taking note of that and appreciating what we did.
Look, you provided a great character. You can only work with what you're given, and I forget who says it, but who said it at one point, but um, a, 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 a good actor can elevate a bad script a little bit. But when you're presented with someone, who is just like, well, this is an interesting guy. Yes, he's largely in service of this story, but that doesn't mean that we can't find like little nooks and crannies, little chinks in this guy's armor to embellish and make interesting. I really appreciate it, Netan. So yeah, Damian Robbie wanted to know, would you come back to New Stargate? So that's a big thumbs up then.
David,
Okay.
it's
I'll take that as
no-brainer.
well.
Absolutely. In a heartbeat. I'll play the bad guy, or I'll play, whatever guy. I'll play the casa addict. I'll play whatever. Let's go.
Space corn.
Like a lot of actors. That's right. Like a lot of actors, just all I want is meat on the bone.
Yeah.
Give me something to chew on.
Yeah.
Bad or good.
That's right. That's right. Well, it has been such a treat to have you on. Any plans out beyond being with and taking care of family, or is this just where you are at this point, and this is your focus?
Yeah, right now it's a little sabbatical.
Yeah.
I like to call it.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, but I got to take care of things here for a while. But there's a film down in Georgia a friend of mine's doing for Lionsgate at the end of the summer. There's something I might be involved in. Right now, to be honest, I'm thinking very much in the very short term, what's right in front of me. And, and that's, as we spoke of before, because I'm very lucky to have a great maestra as a mother, and she needs help. So we're together in that common goal now, and hopefully soon get back to the art, get back to the work. Because it's definitely the one thing that I feel missing the most past short period of time. So yeah, that's what I'm in the short game right now, but always being fed. The other day I went to a great piece out here in Washington. Bill Irwin, the great stage performer, did Samuel Beckett on stage here, a one-man Samuel Beckett piece, and it was extraordinary. So any bit of inspiration I get, wherever it comes from, is feeding me. Whether it's for now, it's not important. It'll be for later if it's for later. And this too feeds me. It's such a joy to be able to talk to you and to be engaged in appreciating what a unique thing it was we were involved in, and how much kind of joy it brought people.
May I ask you a personal question?
No, of course.
Can you share with us something about your mother that that you take with you, that is either a lesson that she's taught you, or is something that she exudes as her person, as a person who helped raise you and helped make you the man that you become?
Yeah, that's a nice question. I appreciate that, David. I do have, I was doing a play and I spent a whole week's salary to bring my mom and dad to put them up in a hotel. They come to see the opening night, and it was just a smash. There were 3 standing ovations. It was a glorious success. I go down into the basement, and there's a bar there, an old bar at the theater. My parents are waiting at a table. My father, he's like, "Oh, Eric, I'm proud of you. He's not very expressive. He's an American man from his generation. Emotions are not what is done, right? But then my mother, I get to my mother. My mother looks at me with this kind of stern look. She reaches down, she opens her purse, and she pulls out this long piece of paper. And she just hands it to me, and she says, "Your vocal notes." And that's what she said. And I remember just being like, ooh. And my dad was like, "No, honey, why are you doing it? He was great." And she just stops him and she says, "Don't you understand? If he was no good, I'd tell him, 'Oh, you were so great. We're so proud of you. But you had something. So if you're serious, get serious." And she had written down, "You're losing all your last speech. I didn't hear a word. You get too emotional. You're running around. What's wrong?" And she was so specific. And here's the thing. She was right. She was right. She was absolutely right. My diction was off. I couldn't hear the thing. There was all this. I was going too fast. There was too much emotion. I was over, And she was like, "Okay, get serious." And, that's the kind of, for my mother, as an Asian woman from an old school artistic background, that's how you express love, right? You don't say, in Western cultures, you'd be like, "Oh, great, you're so pretty, wonderful, you did this." So in Asian cultures, they don't say that. Say, "No, get real. The way you're treated is commensurate with your potential. Like, if you're serious, then you're going to get reamed, because they're trying to hammer you into, the steel into something harder." So that was very much indicative of the way my mom influenced me. She would always tell me, "Stop moving. All that power, it comes from stillness." Again, that's what I loved working with Teal for. All that power, it's all about that silence and that stillness. And then when you do express and explode, then it's. So I would say that's one of those great lessons my mom gave me. And thank you for asking. That's a very sweet question.
I cannot articulate enough how important it is. Let me come about this a different way. Our parents loved us enough to be honest with us when we were lousy. I have a couple of friends who, when they, regardless of what they did, the sun rose and set on them, and on their kids. And I would approach my buddy and be like, "This wasn't very good." He's like, "Well, I don't like your tone." And it's like, you're not getting the message. It's because he wasn't taught that. I fear for much of the generation that is coming up that we are treating them far too fragile. They're stronger than we give them credit for, and we're doing disrespect to them by not straightening them out when we see something is wrong. The fact that your mother loved you enough to come to a performance afterwards and give you notes, that is a beautiful form of love, because she knew that you could handle it, and also recognized that you would recognize what this was, which was, I love you enough to show you, because she's used to be on stage, to show you a way in which you can do better. And I know that you're going to execute it better next time. And that's awesome.
It's so true. Yeah, I appreciate you appreciating that. My mother, she doesn't fuck about. She's old school serious. And sometimes, I miss, even in the dressing room or your trailer, sometimes I wonder nowadays if nobody even tries to joke the way we used to joke in the back rehearsal rooms or on the set. Like,
that's right.
And I don't mean like inappropriate sexual stuff like that. I don't mean that. I just mean attitude wise. I remember coming off sets or in dressing room, and somebody will be like, "Oh," it's one time in particular, we're like, "All right, you guys, that was pretty good. Let's all get something to eat and we'll talk about it." And, one of the actors I was working was like, "Oh no, Eric doesn't need to eat. He ate plenty on stage." and everybody's laughing at you. And nowadays, if you make jokes like that, you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. H&R is going to get involved, and then there's going to be problems.
No, you have to.
But
You have to be able to have a thick
joke
skin.
about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
No, it's I look for those opportunities in life where you can make genuine connections with people. As I feel that we've had, in the last couple of hours here, I sincerely appreciate you taking the amount of time that you have and being willing to be vulnerable and share some great stories with me. It has meant a lot to have you, and I can't thank you enough.
David, thank you. I thank you as well. It's been a joy to be reminded of it and to think about those lessons. So, I'm grateful. I am. And I'm grateful to the fans who ask questions. The fact that you're interested and you even noticed, it's very gratifying. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You were a big part of that show, and we're so lucky as a fandom to be able to have more. So truly all my best to you and to your family.
You guys are too kind. You're too kind.
You are exactly where you need to be, and life happens to all of us, and you're there to face it standing up with your back straight and being with the people that you love. So I'm thrilled that you took some time
you got it
to
right.
take care of us, to be with us.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, sir.
I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show on this side.
Okay, sir. Take care.
Thank you, sir. That is Eric Steinberg, everyone. Netan, Stargate SG-1, the leader of the Lucian Alliance. My name is David Reed. You're watching the Stargate Oral History Project. If you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, please do me a favor and hit that like button. It does make a difference with the show and will continue to help us to grow our audience. There's a lot in flux right now. There's a lot changing, and we just really do appreciate all the help. Please consider sharing the video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And if you click the bell icon, you'll get notified the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on Dial the Gate. That's pretty much all that I have for you here. We have Dan Payne coming on tomorrow. If I've got my button, where's my button? Dan Payne is joining us tomorrow at 3 p.m. Is it 3 p.m.? I apologize, everyone. 2 p.m. Pacific time. So he's back to talk about his many roles in Stargate SG-1 and Atlantis. It's going to be a treat to have him. Thank you to everyone who've responded to my new Patreon. I'm so tremendously humbled, and I will be speaking more about that this coming week. Thanks so much to Lockwatcher, to Anthony, to Jacob for making this episode possible. You guys are the best. I can't do this alone, and I appreciate every one of you. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you on the other side. Bye-bye, everybody.